Welcome to the Mavens Do It Better podcast. And now, your host, Heather Newman.
Hello, listeners. I am super excited about today's guest. Her name is Karin Reed, and she is the CEO of Speaker Dynamics, a communications firm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, Karin has made a career out of communicating through a camera. She's been an award-winning, Emmy-winning broadcast journalist, on-camera spokesperson, and an executive communications specialist. She also has a super cool new book coming out called Suddenly Virtual, which makes me want to sing it like, Suddenly Virtual, of course, because you kind of have to. But anyway, Karin is awesome. Had a great conversation with her, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Here we are again for another Mavens Do It Better podcast, where we interview extraordinary experts who bring a light to our world. And today I have the amazing and wonderful Karin Reed on, who definitely brings a light to the world. And you have the coolest title ever for her own company. She is CEO and Chief Confidence Creator for Speaker Dynamics. So welcome, Karin. Yay.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that wonderful title, Chief Confidence Creator. Yeah.
Well, really, that is at the core of what we do at our company, Speaker Dynamics. So my role and that of my team is to really just create confident communicators. And that can typically be across any platform, but more and more often it's on camera. And I always think about how I work in an area that people hate, two things that people hate, being on camera and public speaking. And so the idea is whenever we are working with clients, we want to make sure that we give them the confidence to be as effective as they can be in whatever communication space they're in, because everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has great ideas in their heads, and it's our job to kind of bring it out of them so that it can go out into the world and enrich all of us.
Yeah. First of all, I could listen to you for hours.
Why?
Yeah, because you've got such a great voice, and you're like, so it's like newsflash to everybody. Haha, I guess I did it that way. But yeah, you have a background, as we were just talking about before we got on the pod, in journalism as well.
That's correct. Yeah, I began actually my senior year of college at the CBS affiliate in Youngstown, Ohio. And I was the weekend reporter and weekend weather person, which is ridiculous because I knew nothing about weather at the time. I still know very little about weather except for the way the winds go around the high and low pressure systems. Sure. But at that time, you could get away with it because there wasn't this emphasis as there should be on having a degree in meteorology. So I became really good friends with the people at the National Weather Service. And they would tell me what was going on. And, I was able to kind of have the gift for gab and impart the information that was critical. But, it was an interesting experience because at that level, you are everything. I was, doing the weather, and I would be rebooting the graphics machine by crawling under all of this equipment and pressing a button. And then I would quickly go and try to edit together video, and then I'd be writing. And then whenever I did move into a position where I was also anchoring at the same time, I would sit down and I would run the teleprompter with my foot. So my first newscast, this is a true story, my first newscast I ever did, the way it worked at that time is they would tape together the different pages of the script and put it on this conveyor belt that kind of fed its way through, and somehow by magic it appeared in the teleprompter in front of me. And so as mentioned, I ran the teleprompter with my foot. It was a pedal, and I began opening the newscast, first one ever, to press the lever, and I saw out of the corner of my eye, all of the pages basically go and fall onto the floor.
Oh no.
And I thought, oh my, I'm in big trouble. And so I had to do the entire first block of news without a teleprompter and just used the hard copy scripts that I brought with me that I had on the desk with me. But what I didn't realize is the teleprompter actually had a forward and a reverse. And it was in reverse.
Oh my goodness.
So when I depressed the pedal, it all just went to the floor. But it was definitely trial by fire, and I learned a lot. When I graduated, I went full time, and then I was quickly brought up to the NBC owned and operated station in Providence, Rhode Island, and that's where I spent the majority of my career, and got to interview people like Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
That's where I won my Emmy on a documentary I did on special needs adoption, and just had great experiences and loved being able to hear everybody's different stories. And that's really where I found my joy.
That's so cool. Yeah. I was like, yes, she's Emmy winner, it's everybody, and an Edward R. Murrow Award as well. So that's super cool. Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah. We were just talking about Jerry Palm, who's also on CBS as well. So shout out to Jerry.
Yeah.
So who was as well. But yeah, so you were a journalist and you were an anchor on air and doing all this great stuff. And you've been doing, contributing correspondent work and then getting into more sort of the leadership and executive coaching. And how long have you had your business?
So I left TV news in 2004. And I mean, to be completely transparent, I had 2 kids a year apart. And that was just very difficult to juggle with the world of TV news. It's very challenging to spend time with family and not be interrupted constantly because news breaks and you have to go. Yep. So I left having had a wonderful career on my own terms, and I started applying my skills in the corporate world where I was an on-camera spokesperson.
Gotcha.
And what I found, Heather, is that I would be brought in as the professional, but more and more often they would pull somebody in from the corner office to the corner cubicle and have them appear on camera alongside of me and expect them to perform at the same level of skill. So I thought, hey, you know what? I think I can help people to do this better. And that was about a decade ago. Wow. So I created a methodology based on the MVPs of on-camera success, which is the mental mindset, vocal variety, and physical factors. Okay. And I've been teaching that for a long time, mostly at like the executive level. But then the COVID hit, the pandemic hit, and suddenly I went from training the executive leadership team to training the entire enterprise because everybody needed to be better on camera and know how to navigate all of these virtual meetings that they were having, where video was at their core.
That's amazing. And it is, working in and around Microsoft like I have been, and using different tools and, Teams versus, Zoom versus, GoToMeeting and all of that stuff. And everybody's got a different setup. I'm looking at, a boom mic and a ring light and, 3 screens and all of that kind of stuff. And that's my work setup. It also doubles as my podcast setup. I mean, for you, where are you right now? Like, is that your sort of
home office?
That's your home office. Okay.
It is. But it's curated.
Sure. Well, right.
I could have complete chaos on either side of the screen and you would not know it. And that's what I try to tell people too. Yeah. You do not have to have a Hollywood set designer come in and fix your space. Right. Basically you want to have something that is uncluttered and non-distracting. Yeah. So you can only, you only show so much of what the camera allows. So I've got maybe 5 feet behind me that is in that state. Right. But if you can just carve out a little space in your home, you can conduct yourself on these meetings in a way that is going to still allow you to be protecting your personal and corporate brand.
Absolutely. And it's sort of what works for different people, right? And for different situations, right? So for something maybe, I'll use a technical term, fancy pants. Like for something a little bit fancy pants, maybe work. Like, so would I maybe be showing all of this? Maybe not. I would use a filter maybe, or I would maybe drop in something else, like a sheet, or I have a desk over here too, or maybe I'd change it, the angle kind of thing, right? It sort of depends on what you're doing in your audience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the key thing is to match audience expectations. So the way you show up, and that encompasses everything from your lighting, your framing, your background, your audio, depends upon who your meeting with.
Right.
So if you're talking to your internal team, that's a different expectation than if you're meeting with an external stakeholder.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, gosh, with all of this, I'm sure you have, your business is probably lots and lots of people with all of the virtual with COVID. Yeah.
And well, it actually tripled in
goodness.
March 2020.
Wow, I bet.
So it was like drinking from the fire hose and trying to figure out how to accommodate the demand. So it caused us to really think about, okay, how can we scale this and amplify the message? So we really took kind of really three paths. So added some more folks to my team, but also decided, okay, we need some sort of online training.
Right.
So that we can have more people be exposed to the content and figure out how to do these virtual engagements better. So that is officially launching March 1st. I'm so excited about it. I am really thrilled. It's multifaceted. I feel like it's done at a pretty high quality that I'm really proud of. So that is the one route. So that allows us to say, whenever a client says, hey, can you train 8,000 people? We can say yes, rather than starting to cry.
Right. Fair, yeah.
And the other thing that we did was we wrote a book. So, and when I say we, the co-author is Dr. Joseph Allen, who is a thought leader in meeting science. Did you know there were meeting scientists? Maybe
I did not, but that sounds very cool. So
it is.
Wow.
He's out of the University of Utah, and he is a director of the Center for Meeting Effectiveness. So he comes at virtual meetings from a researcher science perspective. I come at it from a video communication expert perspective. And we kind of brought those two different areas of expertise together to create data-based insights in real world application.
Yeah, absolutely. And the book is called Suddenly, I love the title, Suddenly Virtual.
Yes, making remote meetings work.
There we go. Okay.
Yes, and so that is hopefully going to catch people's attention and allow them to, just have some kind of science-based best practices that they can try. It's a combination of the theory, but there's a lot of practical tips. And I feel like that's really important because you kind of need a guidebook, whenever you're in this new modality. And as we head into, what happens next with hybrid meetings, there's also going to be just kind of this, clamoring for information on how to navigate it, because this is going to be part of the corporate DNA from here on out. It's not like we're going to ever go back to a time where virtual meetings are a small percentage of our life.
Yep.
They're still going to exist, just by virtue of the fact that so many people are going to say, hey, this remote work is really working for me. I'd really like to continue it, at least to some extent.
Yeah.
Other folks will be clamoring to get into the office, but you have to have all those people be able to meet and talk to each other.
Yep, absolutely. And I love it. And so creating confidence on camera, communicators at every level of enterprise. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I'm wondering, I did a workplace culture talk for one of my internal teams the other day, and I was pulling from Microsoft did a bunch of research on work. It's like a work trends index and looking at, not only confidence, but thinking about like how you set meetings up and just the fact that we're fatigued as well. Right. Like all day long on a call. Like it was saying there was like 30 minutes in to is the slump time.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of factors that play into, what we've heard called Zoom fatigue, and a lot of it is, I would say, operator error. Like we are setting ourselves up for that draining experience because, a couple of different reasons. First of all, people think, you can just take the time that you would normally allot to an in-person meeting and transfer it into a virtual environment.
Right.
And it's not a one-for-one situation because being in a virtual meeting requires a much higher level of energy and brain power. A couple of reasons why. It requires more of us to decode a message because if you have your video on, It's great. You have some nonverbal cues that you can read, but there are fewer of them. So we're constantly trying to read, the data points, which are fewer than when we're in person.
Right.
Then also there's this whole idea of emotional labor, which Dr. Allen talks about, where you are often doing something called surface acting, where you have to almost always look like you are engaged and present mentally and physically. And that can be very draining on us. And so these virtual meetings really require a high level of endurance. Yeah. So as an organizer, it's really important that you recognize that and schedule them accordingly. But you've probably experienced the back-to-back-to-back meeting day.
Yep. I had one today.
It's terrible.
It's most days, but
right. And a lot of that is due to just people constantly thinking, oh, let's just go on Teams. Let's just go on Zoom. You don't have to have a meeting for every single item that is on your agenda that day. Maybe it suffices by sending an email or a text or doing a quick phone call. So I think people need to be more intentional about the kind of work that's being done in these meetings so that you aren't forcing people to be, in this space for 8 hours a day, if not longer.
Yeah. I wondered, it's like, my energy, like I traveled a ton and spoke all over and all of that. And I've always been very energetic. And then I was sort of feeling like, I don't know, maybe it was August or September. And I was like, man, wow, I'm start at 7 and I don't stop until 7 and it's back to back, no breaks, and I'm always like, sorry, got to take a bio break, or like, I just need to go get some water. I need to go like step outside for a second or whatever, because it's one of those where I am more productive, but also you need the brain time to be creative too, right? If I'm trying to be strategic and write and lead a team, when am I supposed to do that?
Exactly. You've no time to actually get the real work done, right? So there's that issue. There's also a matter of just being able to task switch in your head, debrief in your own mind on what just happened in the previous meeting, and then prepare for the next meeting. Right. And that's a critical time. And part of the problem is we'll just kind of go with what the calendar default gives us. It's an hour-long chunk of time that just shows up on our calendar. Yep. Don't do that. Yeah. If you think that the meeting's going to take 15 minutes, make it a 15-minute meeting, and be really intentional about that. And what we're finding through our research is that the most effective meetings are the ones that are shorter and more purpose-driven. Yeah. Meaning rather than having an agenda that is 10 items long, you have an agenda that's 2 items long, and you cover it and you get stuff done, and you have action items at the end, and it's recorded and sent out to the masses so everybody knows what happened. And that is going to ensure that you're going to actually have a virtual meeting that is valuable. Yeah. It's also a matter of having the right number of people in the room, because that also occurs where, invite him or her along as well. And they don't necessarily have to be in that meeting. And if you get too big in a meeting in a virtual space, it becomes unwieldy really quickly. Yeah. And so like the sweet spot for any meeting for decision-making is between 5 to 7 people. And certainly in a virtual setting, that is about where I'd max out if you truly want to be able to have a dialogue. Yeah. No, those are great tips. Yeah. We've been talking about meeting trickery, if you will, like no meeting Fridays, starting on the 05, starting on, if it's a half hour, starting on the 10, because you can never catch up on the back end, it seems. Right. And absolutely. And what has also happened, because we all are dispersed, is you don't have those quick, stop in the office next door and just say, oh, hey, quickly, can you just, confirm or deny this, whatever. You can't do that as efficiently when you're remote. So that's why you're creating, let's hop on Zoom, let's hop on Teams. And then it just kind of fills up your space. And you can get to the end of the week and you're like, oh my gosh, I just am completely tapped out. And that's not good for anybody. No, not at all. I want to jump backwards a little bit and talk about
origin story. So
Okay.
where are you from, and how did this go for you? How did you get here? Yeah.
So, I mean, we could go way back, but
Sure.
I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am a huge Pittsburgh sports fan.
Gotcha.
So we follow all the teams, even though we currently live in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, they always say the Steelers travel well.
Yeah.
It's truly the case, so we went to a Panthers game wearing our Steelers garb. And we walked in and we were kind of sad because at the time there were more Steelers jerseys there than there were Panthers jerseys.
Wow.
And we're like, oh, this is kind of sad, but it was pretty early on in the franchise career. And so I think it's probably evened out a little bit, but,
sure.
So that is truly, what I consider home. And my husband's one of 10. So I think if you throw a stick in any direction in Pittsburgh, you're going to hit one of his relatives. So we go back fairly often.
Right.
And, it was there that it was in 7th grade, I had to write an autobiography. And at the final chapter was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said one of two things. I either wanted to be on Broadway or I wanted to be a news anchor.
Oh, wow.
But then I went to college and I was an accounting major. What happened? But there's a reason for this. So I graduated high school in 3 years, and my parents said, okay, you can go to one school, and that's the school where your sister is. Because you're young going to college. We want to kind of have her keep an eye on you. Gotcha. And she was an accounting major. So I'm like, I guess I will major in accouning too. But it took about one semester for me to realize, oh my gosh, I hate this. And I'm not good at it. So I quickly switched into, it was... So if you look at my diploma, it says communications AUX because my school at the time did not have a communications major. But they allowed me to create my own curriculum, which became like a communications major. So it was a lot of lit classes, it was a lot of English, and it worked. But because my school was not a journalism school, it forced me to do a lot of work outside of college with lots of silly jobs. Like I was the lifestyles editor at this biweekly newspaper, which was actually a great place just to people watch. Right. And lots of internships at various places. And it was that through that network that I was able to get that job my senior year of college and just kind of let the career drag me.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I was a theater major back in the day.
Oh, very nice.
Yes, University of Washington. So
yeah. I saw that. Weren't you like a tri-sig?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I was too.
Oh, get out of town.
But here's like a ridiculous thing. So the school where I was, they only had local sororities. So my local sorority, which was Tri-Sig, was sued by the National Tri-Sig sorority, and we had to change our name.
Way.
So we went from being, it's a totally true story, went from being Tri-Sig to Tri-Zeta. Which was actually 3 Z's.
Flipped right? Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
3 Z's, and our colors were black and gold. And I'm like, we look like bumblebees.
That's, wow. Yeah. So my Tri-Sig experience, I went to a 1-year college at Illinois State in Normal, Illinois. And I was, it's in the middle of a cornfield. And it was very cold and all of that stuff. So I was like, I should pledge. Why not? So I did. But then it was I was a founding mother of that chapter of Epsilon Omicron. And then I transferred to University of Washington. Yeah. And there's no Tri-Sigs there. Oh. So I was in it for like a blip.
But you had an impact as a founding mother.
Yes, I was the parliamentarian, so I wrote all the rules. So that was kind of fun. Yeah.
Goodness.
I threw the parties too. So, parliamentarian party.
Right.
And so,
very similar role.
Yeah, that's so funny. Oh man, well, it's so cool that after all of your journalism and all that wonderful things that you did, and now you're helping coach people, and then coaching not just executives and stuff, but coaching everyone. Is there something that is if you're going to pick like a universal truth about this on camera stuff? Right. Is there something that kind of comes up every time that is the Yes. I mean, there definitely is, because it impacts
everything that you do when you're speaking through a camera. So it's always an audience of one. And understanding that is really critical, because rather than you thinking about performing to a piece of glass, the camera is the conduit to your conversation partner. And so if you stay in the conversation space, that's going to change how you communicate vocally. It's going to change how you communicate physically, right? Because that's critical to also maintaining that authenticity. And authenticity is what works on camera, not perfection. And too many times people, as soon as you have the camera involved, they think, oh, I'm performing and I want to try to, be, absolutely perfect. But the harder you try to be perfect, the more difficult it becomes. And then you start losing your genuine self. So if you can get out of your own head and just allow the camera to be the place where you pour your energy and focus, and recognize that you're talking to a person that you can't see as well as you'd like to, then you're going to come across great on camera, and it can make all the difference.
That's cool. I love that. The communication. Yeah. I've never heard anybody put it that way. So look, of course you're doing what you do. That's so great.
Oh, thank you.
It's super cool. And you have a great blog too. I was reading through that. So great sort of snippets of how-tos. I really love it. It's sort of, I don't know, with anything, I love the big ethereal kind of overarching, conversations about wellness or communication skills and all of that stuff. But what I like about the book, and you're giving really tactical and tangible things that people can do. And I think that's what we need. You know what I mean? And it's not like, speak up and sit down. It's no, okay, put a squeaky thing next to the camera so you look at it, or, you know what I mean? Like, like, I feel like you're really tactical.
Well, I try to do that because anytime doing training, I always think, it needs to be delivered efficiently and be immediately applicable.
Right.
Because I think it'd be disastrous if they spent a couple hours with me and they're like, well, that really wasn't worth my time.
Yeah.
That would be devastating.
Right. Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that they feel like, this is time well spent. So I like to give people, the theory behind it, but now I'm going to tell you how you can apply it. And it's something that you can do immediately and have it make a difference right away. So for example, I do a segment on elevating your personal production value, which means like how you show up on webcam. And one of the great joys of my job is watching people change their shot in midstream during the workshop. And I've had crazy things happen where like we'll do a break and we'll come back all together and everybody turns their camera back on and they're in different locations, like completely different locations, or they've changed their clothes.
Yeah.
You did that in like the 10 minutes I gave you for a break. So
totally.
And it gives people that confidence that, hey, I got this. This is not, and I hate the cliche, but it's not brain surgery. It's just a matter of raising your awareness about what works and what does not.
Yeah.
And if you like some production value tips, I'm happy to convey them.
Yeah.
Because there are four main areas that I would suggest that you focus on. The first one is your background.
Right.
We all, we probably kind of alluded to that.
Sure.
Uncluttered, not revealing anything about yourself you wouldn't want revealed in person, and ensuring that you have a little bit of depth to your shot. Because what can happen is people will be like, okay, I'm going to sit in front of a blank wall right up against it. And they look like they're getting their driver's license picture taken or something. And so what I counsel is to have a little bit of space between you and whatever is behind you to create some depth of field.
Yeah.
So background is really critical, nothing distracting in the shot. The second one is lighting. Yeah. And lighting makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And you want to focus on lighting your face. You've got the ring light, Heather. Yeah. I have kind of this smaller LED panel that can be dialed up and down based upon what Mother Nature is providing.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of people don't recognize just how valuable that is. And the reason why is because, as mentioned, you have fewer data points that you can convey through your body language. So you want to ensure whatever you can give them is easily readable. So if your face is in shadow, it's like forcing somebody to be on a phone call with you with a bad connection.
Right. They're like,
they're like, wait, I can't really see. So you want to make sure that they can easily read your facial expressions so that they can determine the intent of your message. Like if you do an eye roll, you want them to be able to see the eye roll, right? So the other thing to consider would be the way you are framed. So that's like how much of you they can see in the shot. Whenever you're talking to somebody face to face, you're not going like this and looking up and down.
Right. Yeah.
You're taking in the nonverbals from like this amount of space, which is why I recommend, framing yourself so that you're about mid chest up. And a quick trick, if you take 3 fingers and stack them on top of your head, you want to have just about that space between the top of your head and the top of the screen. Because that way you're kind of like, you're dominating. Exactly. And then you want to make sure that your camera, if possible, can be at eye level, because that allows you to be looking at them straight into the eye. A lot of people will use their laptop webcam and they'll keep it on a desk or on a table and they're looking down.
Yeah, you're looking down or you're getting all this.
Right, exactly. There's all sorts of things that can happen then. None of them are good. So you want to make sure that you elevate it if you're using a laptop webcam and put it on a stack of books, or even get one of those, laptop stands if you want something that's a little bit more stable. And the last thing I would mention is making sure that your audio is crisp and clear. And the thing is, when you're in this space, you have no idea how you sound to the people on the other side. But they certainly can tell if your audio is bad, but they may not let you know. So I always suggest hopping on a call with somebody who will be candid with you and let you know if you sound like you're talking in a tin can.
Absolutely.
And then, check out the different audio inputs you have. Some people use like headsets are awesome. There's always, a really crisp audio that comes from that. I have a lavalier microphone, which is relatively inexpensive. I think it was like $20 on Amazon. And, there are all sorts of different options that you can use. Don't just rely upon the built-in microphone in your laptop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's like, it's funny, like trying to record a podcast, right? And it was like, I used to do them more during the day before my new job. And now I do them, at night and on the weekends and stuff. But I had to move it because the jackhammers. It was when I was doing recording. It was like, I was like, really, y'all? Or it was like the garbage trucks or whatever. And it's actually at night and on the weekends, it's a little bit better, to be honest, than it used to be during the day. And it's just random, But
even those noise canceling headsets work really well. So if you're on a work call, that is a great way to allow you to blot out the extraneous noise, but also stay focused on your call too.
Absolutely. Like these work great. But it is interesting about setup for sure. Have you done any sort of, do you get specific about tech in the books? Because not only she has 2 books, by the way, one is the newer one that we were talking about earlier, but that's really specific about, suddenly virtual, but you have the on-camera coach book as well. So will you talk about the difference? Well,
the on-camera coach was really focused at the time on helping people who were doing like de facto spokespeople work. So it'd be like the executive who is doing the all hands meeting message via video that's going to be sent out across the globe. So it was more geared towards on-camera communication in a studio setting. There was a chapter in there about virtual video communication, but it was really focused more on just different kinds of on-camera communication rather than, the very narrow topic, which is actually quite broad, virtual communication. But that's when I introduced the idea of the MVPs, which is kind of the cornerstone of my curriculum, the mental mindset, vocal variety, and physical factors. And, so they are complementary, but slightly different. Different content. And you mentioned technology. I am not a tech expert by any stretch of the imagination, but like I'm pretty good at these platforms is what I would say. And I know enough of the tricks to help people out. Like, so for example, a lot of people hate watching themselves whenever they are in a virtual meeting. And I use Zoom a lot. I use Teams as well, but I use Zoom probably more often. And one of the cool things about Zoom is that you can do hide self view. So if you want to make yourself disappear so you're not focused on monitoring your own performance, click hide self view and it takes you out of the equation. Because like for the first time, we're seeing ourselves communicate in real time. And that can be distracting and disconcerting.
Like I've done webinars forever. So I'm fairly aware of what I look like on camera and stuff. But yeah, it's amazing to me how I know of someone who, was in 4 months in working from home. Yeah. And I was like, are you working on he had a Surface laptop. And I was like, are you working on that every day? And he was like, yeah, at my living room table. And I was like, get a monitor. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
That's a small.
Yeah, it's screen. Like, and it's like this probably too. I was like, you gotta like work that out,
Yeah. And I mean, that makes it even more exhausting. So, giving yourself a bigger field of view is a great way to improve your experience. One of the things I've seen leaders do in this space is they have standardized equipment and, just said, okay, we are buying this high quality external webcam. We're buying this headset or this microphone, and they send it out to everyone. And that makes so much sense because then you have this kind of uniform way that your people are showing up.
Right.
And even though you might not have folks say, wow, we like this person because they show up really well when they're in a virtual meeting, they might not realize the impact it's having on them, but they do realize that, hey, it's actually really easy to talk with this person.
Yeah, absolutely. Those little things make a huge difference, I think. So
yeah. It's a level of professionalism that needs to be maintained, even in this virtual space.
Yeah. Even when there's dogs and kids running around sometimes with people, right?
Yeah, but I tell you, one of the great things about all of this suddenly virtual, suddenly remote work is there is a lot of empathy that has been created as a result. And I think it's fascinating how rather than just seeing our coworkers as their roles, we're seeing them as whole people. Yeah. And I'm sure there are a ton of researchers who are looking into this, just in terms of like the whole dynamic of a team relative to this, but I find it fascinating.
Yeah, you get a bigger picture, maybe not the whole story, but more of the story for sure.
Or like part of the story that you're like, what?
Yeah, right. You're like, okay.
I was working with a client who had I thought it was her dog snoring at her feet, and it turned out it was her potbelly pig. Like,
oh wow,
potbelly pig.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness.
It's very interesting to see
That's cool.
Some of the situations that people find themselves in because they had not planned on working from home, but they are now.
Yeah, that's for sure. We all are going through that. Well, I'm going to ask you my last question that I ask everybody. I could talk to you like for another 3 hours because I know you're full of all the good tips and tricks, but you know what, everybody, go check out the book.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, actually, before I do that, I want to ask you one thing. So I love an online course. I do some of that stuff myself. Yeah. What did you use, if you don't mind sharing, for your course? Is it on a certain platform, or where's it going to be?
It is on a platform called Talent LMS. Okay. And I'm working with a tech partner called NextLX, who I think are phenomenal. Okay. So what I love about them is they are a combination of instructional designers, behavioral scientists, and screenwriters.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So the way the course works, you have 3 things. You have lessons, which are often delivered in video form from me. Yep. You have scenarios where they create like this story world, and you see the techniques applied in this, real world situation. The one that I'm thinking about right now is poor Gary has to MC a virtual event, and he is just terrible. And so it goes back and forth with these texts to his friends, and you're his friend, and you have to help him to get better. Oh, wow. So it's fun. It's not cheesy, and I'm just really happy with that. And then the missions are the final component, which are like real world, where you're told, okay, think about an on-camera scenario that you have coming up in your life, whether that's a virtual meeting, virtual presentation, and then you have to record yourself doing it, and you are given guidance on what to look for. So I'm really happy with the course, and thank you for asking about that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm always interested. I love what we use, to do our stuff with. Yeah. And, speaking of backgrounds and stuff, I think that's kind of funny is that what I've noticed, especially in tech and a lot of other places, is that there seems to always be like a guitar in the background in a lot of people's things.
A lot of guitar.
Right. And I always,
funny.
And I don't have it in here, but in my other office before I moved, I had a guitar on the wall. Now I keep a guitar on the wall, not because I know how to play, but because I love and have a lot of musicians in my life. And I love it that they can take the guitar off the wall and play when they're at my house. I know that sounds random, but that's totally why. I did play in college a little bit, but it's just one of those things that I never kept up. But I have a beautiful guitar, and I'm like, well, that should be. And it gets used a lot.
That's awesome.
Pre-COVID, before we all couldn't see each other.
Right.
But that's the truth. But I laugh, and I'm always like, I wonder if that person actually plays that guitar or not, you know?
I ask because actually I have a son who is a really excellent guitarist. And I'm always like, so what is that? Is that a Gretsch? Is that a Gibson? Is that a Fender? And like, I really want to know. And then I tell the stories to my kids afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really cool. Or they're
that's
like, Mom,
funny.
We don't really care.
Yeah, whatever.
They're teenagers.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah. Okay. They don't care. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Well, how awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited. This is super cool. And
it's been so much fun, Heather. Thank you.
I love the brand. Yeah. So last question.
Okay.
Yeah. So I love thinking about moments for that theater training, you know, moment to moment acting and stuff. But so moments in our lives, and if you would share with our audience a spark, a moment that you can pinpoint that really seats you in who you are today, that you'd share with us. I have one that is from, way back. I don't even know how old I was, but I was actually visiting my dad I was with my mom and my sister, and we were going down to visit my dad at his big, high rise in downtown Pittsburgh. We were going to have lunch with him, and he was introducing us to folks in his office, and he was, pretty high up. He was in HR, and it was exciting to see an office space like that. But what I noticed was what happened afterwards as we were leaving to go to lunch. There was a guy who was in the lobby who was polishing the brass railing, and my dad stopped and introduced us, and he knew that everything about this guy's life. He knew about his family. He knew about, just his history, and he was as proud to introduce us to the guy who was polishing the railings in the lobby as he was to introduce us to the CEO of his company. And it stuck with me even at that young age that, treat everybody the way you'd want to be treated. And that I think really kind of carried me through my life. I try to live that, and try to impart it to my children as well. Love that. That's super cool. Yeah. I used to visit my dad at work. He was a JCPenney manager for 40 years. And there was a time when it was Mr. Cook. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's sort of some of that stuff has gone away, but that was always something. Going and sitting in his office desk was a thing for me too.
Yeah. And I think it was a beautiful thing that I feel like both of my parents have the ability to talk to anyone. Yeah. and they treat everyone exactly the same, no matter what their background is. Yeah. And I think that's really a beautiful thing. They're also both incredibly curious. My dad has since passed away, but my mom is an incredibly curious person. And she will know the life story of the person she got into the elevator with at floor 1 by the time they get to floor 4. And I think that's probably the reason why I was a good reporter, because I am curious about everybody. Right. Yep. So it all kind of, blends into who you are and where you end up in your professional life.
Yeah. I was like, we have some similarities in our background for sure. So
I think all podcasters would be excellent journalists. And storytellers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's a cool, very cool story. Curious, and everybody has a story, and we're all the same. So
absolutely.
That's so great. Well, cool. Well, Speaker Dynamics is your wonderful company, and I'm sure you're all over social media with your company. Where can people find you on the Twitterverse?
It is also at Speaker Dynamics. I mean, we literally, like, if you do Speaker Dynamics under, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is mostly where we live, I would say, because that seems to be where my people are.
Yes, sure. Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
the biggest following, but we really kind of have blanketed everything, and we would love to have people follow us. And we do try to post a lot of content relative to the virtual world in which we are all living right now, just to help people to feel more comfortable and like empower them
awesome.
with some real strategies.
Yeah. So super on point and of the now, as they say. So awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Karin, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the pod today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, this is another episode of the Mavens Do It Better podcast. Here is to another big, beautiful day on this blue spinning sphere. Thanks so much. Thanks, Karin. Bye.
Bye.
The original music on this podcast was created by Jesse Case.